Today, we have Calgary's very own Noah Vucsics jumping on the podcast. Noah is a rising star in the Paralympic scene. He's a jack of all trades when it comes to athletics, from long jump to the 400 meters. I've been looking forward to having Noah on the podcast for some time now. With further ado, welcome Noah to the Strides with Graywolf podcast. What's up, my man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are things going, my man?
Pretty good. Obviously, we're not training now that we're in a 2-week kind of shutdown, but before the shutdown, we were starting training again, trying to get back into shape. So we just look forward for hopefully when we open on the 27th, we can get back to that again. So and potentially have a somewhat of a season next year.
Yes. I very much agree with you there. I think it's when doing a podcast, I think it's very fun to find out where you actually came from and like what that foundation was like. And so I'm going to start off with a quote, and then I would love to hear kind of early what it was like, Noah, growing up and how you got into sport. But first, as I look back on my life, I realized that every time I thought I was being rejected for something good, I was actually being redirected to something better. And that's a quote that I just found yesterday, and I thought it was very it matched for a Paralympic athlete's life. And so what was it like growing up? And then eventually, how did you get into track and field?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, especially for me, I was in a paced learning program growing up in school. So I always kind of had struggles with my learning and stuff like that. So I did a little bit of track, like, when I was younger with my sister, but that was just kind of more, my parents kind of got me into it. I was running like 60 meters and stuff. But back then at the age of 10, hated competing, suffered massive anxiety. I think in my first race, I stepped into someone's lane and then got a stern warning from the officials. So it really wasn't a good experience. Then I needed knee surgeries after. So I didn't really kind of get into track until I was kind of near the end of high school, where I, kind of growing up, I loved to just jump over garbage cans, touch 10-foot rims and stuff. I tried a little bit of high jump, but that never fully kind of clicked. But it really wasn't until my dad and my coach in high school got me into like long jump, and then got a pair of track spikes. And then I really started to notice improvements as I started kind of jumping over 6 meters kind of for the first time. And then my dad's like, okay, yeah, you have to kind of stick with this, and get some training in you and see what you can do. So, but overall growing up for me, it was always challenging being in the slow classes, because a lot of kids couldn't really figure out, how can a guy be so sociable and, be the valedictorian for his grad class, but then also have a learning disability at the same time. A lot of people couldn't really seem to figure that out. So that was always kind of a challenge, getting that across to people that, I'm not just making this stuff up. I do have, academic struggles. But
I can definitely relate to that as well. As you and I have had many Zoom calls catching up with each other, and we definitely share that we both had that. Did you have trouble in school? Just people being like, it's like with some disabilities are just so glaring, and you can just see them walking down the street, and but with both of ours, it's almost invisible at times.
Yeah.
And so how was that experience? Was that tough?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of started to realize how hard it I shouldn't say how hard, but it was tough, but more, I didn't realize it till I was getting a bit older. And because at first, normally someone has a disability in a wheelchair, you can see that and you think, wow, that must be hard. But no, having a disability that can't be seen is still kind of a hard thing. Especially after I did my valedictorian speech, some of my classmates were like, well, you could probably just go to university, get a bunch of degrees if you really wanted to. So they never really could kind of understand that side of things. And even, in my adult life, in some of my workplaces, there were some things I had to do, like math and stuff that, was just a little bit more challenging for me. And, again, people see the social side, the smiley side of me, the happy side, and, the being great at track. But no, definitely. I think having a disability that can't be seen is still one of the hardest things that can be to get across.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously there are negatives, but I also think there are positives. And how do you think your disability helps you just in today's life? And I think a lot of times, like, yeah, there's definitely hurdles to go over, but I feel like with every situation, there's always something positive that you can like hold on and really use later down your life.
Oh, totally. Especially with my experience at working at the Apple store. I've loved being able to, educate people about it. No one really takes it as like a negative thing. They really find it quite interesting. So I've really, in the customer journeys that I've had working at Apple, it's been really great to, educate people on that side of things. They're always curious and very interested about it. So, I mean, yeah, like we can't see a disability that's, within the brain, but I've still had a lot of fun getting to educate people on it. And I hope to, yeah, do that in the future. And I still really want to be a ambassador for people who have learning disabilities.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree, and I'm glad that you see that positive side of it too. And now let's transition a bit into Paralympic sport. When did that come into your life, and what was that transition like? And I remember obviously mine was just somewhat recent, just a couple years ago, but yours is obviously even more fresh. And so I'd love to hear what that was like and what those conversations were like.
Yeah, I mean, I think right when I was kind of getting into a track club in the fall of 2018, my mom kind of had a chat with our club director about para and stuff, and she kind of brought up, okay, no one might be eligible for a category, but not a lot of thought kind of got like put into it, like, even for that past year. Like, it really wasn't until kind of around the spring of 2019, around March, when my dad kind of brought it up with my coach for the first time that, okay, our club director said no, I might be eligible for a category in Paralympics. And then after he did some digging into it, we found out that, I was eligible for a category, but the whole process was pretty long because we had to get some paperwork that had to go all the way to Germany and get assessed and stuff like that. And then once the paperwork went to Germany and stuff like that, it took about 7 or 8 months. I wasn't until around February of 2020 this year when I finally got classified in. So the journey was actually still kind of long, but definitely when I first started track, that was always kind of on the table. But I didn't think at the time that T20 and that was even a thing. So
yeah. No, absolutely. And did you get your international classification? Do you have to do any more classification before the Paralympics, or are you good to go?
Well, I just got an email the other day, actually, because there's one more the international classification that I have to do. But they did say I'm on the top priority to get that done. So potentially maybe in Dubai or Switzerland in 2021, depending on what happens. I think Dubai is a little bit earlier in February, but the Switzerland one is, I think, just at the end of May. So hopefully things can get under control and we can get some consistent training, and then I can get that under my belt.
Definitely. Yeah, that'd be great if you went to the Dubai one, because we already have like 3 or 4 guys, including myself, going out there to get classified. So that would be really cool. We're supposed to, stay in where the world championships were held, and it's at that same track, which would be cool for you to race on. And it's always a cool thing with classification. You always get the race, and so if you go there, at least you're going to get the race. Talk about the long jump. That's I saw one of your big jumps indoors. Was that a PB? I forgot that
was the furthest jump. Yeah, in March.
When did you jump?
It was in March at the Edmonton Provincials. It was a 662. And
man,
for me, jumping that was, because really it was a big challenge for me to get over 650, especially last year. But I was still very new. So going into training this year, once my coach was kind of telling me in the beginning, it takes some time, it takes some patience. It's like, it's one thing to hear it. And I heard that, but I didn't really fully understand what that really meant until probably after a year. And then going into my second year, I'm like, okay, now I'm seeing the results. Now I'm seeing the fold that I'm actually starting to drive forward, and I'm starting to see things come. I'm starting to see the hard work pay off, and then got that new PB there, and I was very happy. My parents got to witness it too. So
that is a nice shiny PB for sure. And where does that rank in your T20 class in the world?
I think of last year that would have put me as number 12 in the world. This year I'm not quite sure where that would have put me, but ideally, if everything was going to go together this year, I mean, the goal was a 680 jump, so which would have put me, I think, pretty much roughly within the top 6. So we just have to, keep the momentum going and hope for something like that. Maybe even for 2021, if we can get the provided training in. So, yeah. And then ideally, I mean, my coach says within the next 2 years, jumps over 7 meters. So that puts
Yeah.
up there to compete with potentially even for a medal by
Yeah.
2024. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like obviously you're somewhat new within track and field, I guess, coming from me where I've been in it since I was born, basically crawling around the track, watching my parents compete. And I feel like when you're so new to the sport, you're just learning and pulling from all different areas. And do you feel like you're still learning at a rapid pace?
Yeah, that's what I definitely have been noticing. Even before we shut down again, we were doing some hundreds in training, and I telling some teammates, like, it's not like the running gets easier, but my form, technique, and the way I'm running is much better today than it was when I was starting. I know it sounds kind of simple, of course, just work on technique, but again, you don't really notice those details until, yeah, even after like a year. It just takes kind of a year to practice and consistency to start really noticing those details. And even, in long jump, in my first year, my biggest problem was I wasn't fully driving forward. And my coach would always say, drive forward, get that momentum pushing forward. But again, it took pretty much a whole year for me to start consistently jumping over 635, and getting into the 640s, right? So it took me really a whole year to be able to start consistently doing that. And that's one thing my coach is good for, is always focusing on the basics and getting consistent. And then those big results will come. So just
Yeah.
in the beginning for me to learn some patience.
Definitely, yeah. It's funny how consistency will a lot of times lead to a massive PB. You're trying to be consistent, and all of a sudden you'll pop one, and it wasn't necessarily consistent with the jumps you've been jumping, but you knew it was on its way because your
Yeah.
stride pattern was finally being consistent. Your mark was uh, consistent, and so it's funny in sport. Like a lot of times we just want this big performance, but sometimes we just gotta come back, be like, all right, how am I gonna do good today instead of a
Yeah.
year from now? Do you find that as well?
Oh, totally. Because when I first started track, I think in the summer of 2018, I had this kind of fluke jump of 630. So when I first started track um, in 2018, I told my coach, yeah, let's just 630. All I care about. Don't care about anything. Don't really care about technique. 630. And my coach kind of like, hey, yeah, you have a fluke of 630, but you're still very new to the sport. You haven't had the years of development of jump. So he's like, sure, yes, you have potential to, be jumping well in between 650 and 7, but we're not quite there just yet. So yes, when I first started, I was very impatient and just kind of wanted these big things right away. Like there was one meet where I got new long jump spikes. I was just ready to go. I was kind of overly excited, and then it's kind of devastating because I think that day jumped like a sad 550, but that was just because of how, unexperienced I was and stuff like that coming into this sport. So my coach had to hold me back and say, hey, you haven't had the training in, let's get consistent, and then those big things will come.
Yes, no, absolutely. The big things will come. And let's go back to that PB jump indoors. Um, when you actually did that jump, did it feel hard? Did it feel smooth? Did you feel like you're in the flow? There's that sense of mindfulness called the flow. And did you feel like you were in that and it was effortless? Like, what was that big jump like?
Well, I was kind of motivated, I guess. Normally when I talk about being motivated in like a race, that's usually because the guy's ahead, right, and you're trying to be pulled along. But before I did that jump, there was one other guy who jumped 650 before me, and before I did 662, my PB was actually a 641. So when I did 641 a few months before I did the 662, I was 650 was obviously on my mind, and then once that guy that day jumped 650. I can't even like explain it, but what just came to my mind was stay calm, don't panic. You're capable of doing this. You've been putting in all this work. So now this is where the experience part comes in that I didn't have a whole year ago. And then I just remember again, it all just happened so quickly, but once I got to the board, it just kind of just clicked. It all came together. And when I landed in the sand, oh boy, I knew it was a big one. So I didn't quite expect it to be over 660, but definitely around that between 650 and 655, but I didn't quite expect it to be over 660, but boy, it definitely felt like a PB jump for sure. So
High performance. And, as you said, like you do get anxious, maybe more anxious than maybe the quote unquote normal able-bodied athlete. How do you combat that? Because being calm and being able to execute your race plan is obviously extremely important for you. And a lot of times, as you said, if you get impatient, your steps will be off, you might foul. So do you have anything that you use prior to your race, or just words you say to yourself to help you come back to center?
Yeah, like it really, again, kind of start being calm. It's not really as simple as a lot of people think, because, sometimes I was trying to be calm, in my first year of track, right? But really kind of just came from just the experience in my first year. Again, there were days when I tried to be calm, but it still just wasn't working. I would still try and over rush it. So that's where the inconsistency of me taking off too far back behind the board, or, having a fault, or just, being very tense in my run up and trying to force a big jump. And one thing I kind of learned within my first year is you can't, well, whether you're running or jumping really, or even throwing, you can't really force a PB. I mean, you could tell yourself, I hope to do great. This is what I hope to do. But when you're actually there on the line in a race, or actually there about to jump, you can't force it. It just has to come, and you just kind of have to trust the process, which, I know it's easier said than done, but that really only comes from just, I think, experience. So that's why, I mean, even in 3-4 years from now, I think I'll be a much better developed athlete, even especially by the Paralympics in 2024, because I'll have those, years and years of experience, and hopefully by then some international meets as well, right? To get me that experience and get me ready to go.
Yeah, no, it's so funny how I wish I could force a PB, because sometimes, in running sometimes I went 2 or 3 years without a PB, and I'm like, man, I just need to force this thing. But trusting the process is, like you said, so important. And I think a big part of your process, at least for me, is a great coach.
Mhm.
What type of impact has your coach played on keeping you consistent, as we talked, but also the pandemic, the timetable has just changed so drastically. So
Mhm.
how has he kept you level headed during this time?
Yeah, no, Coach Year, yeah, he's great. I mean, he's always, reminding us to stay positive. We have another assistant coach who runs some yoga sessions with us, and we also get some online course. Yeah, these are online, so we get some yoga once a week, and we get some online course sessions once a week as well. And then obviously it's snowing now, but in the summer they tell us or give us a list of some things to do some running on our own. So, they're really working hard to keep our bodies in shape for once we get back on the track and we're ready to go, because obviously if we did nothing and then we step on the track again, we wouldn't be fit. So no, they're doing really good on keeping us motivated, still keeping us healthy. And me and my coach sat down the other day, and my coach just wants to give me some positive vibes, and he's like, let's start talking about some goals that are possible for, yeah, closer into 2023 and 2024. So he's still looking out for me, and saying I still have a great future ahead if I still keep my mind to it and not give up. So yeah, he's doing good.
Good. That's awesome. And as you mentioned, goals. I think goals are so important. And so I'm curious how you set goals, because sometimes people write them to literally forget them, and just so that they can focus on the process now. And then some people have big like goal setting things, and they put them in their bathroom or your ceiling where you see them every single day. How do you go about goal setting?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I go about goal settings now is obviously a little bit different than the way I went about goal settings in my first year of track. Like when I first started, again, it was just 6:30, don't care about anything else, whatever. But now, like Jurgen and I, we sat down the other day, and really the goal is to be a consistent 7-meter jumper between 2023 and 2024. Now, even if I jump 7 meters, next year or even in 2022, that's fine, but that's not mission accomplished, because being a consistent 7-meter jumper is different from then jumping 7 meters once, but then on average jumping 670, 660, right? So it was great that me and you kind of sat down about this and talked that, yeah, does it get you to be a consistent jumper by this time? And then in the 400-meter dash as well, we're talking about between 49 and 49.5 by closer to 2023 and 2024. And that can keep me in the mix as well with some of those other guys. So yeah, Yurik has really got me level-minded, and he's really helped me with goals. And that's what makes him, a good coach, is he's never the coach to just throw out random numbers or throw out random results that are just unrealistic. He always says things that are realistic to every athlete who he coaches. So he's really helped me with those goals. So yeah, really what's kind of on, well, originally back in the past, my first goal was 650. I'm like, I can't talk about 7 meters until I can start being, it's a consistent 650 jumper, right? So 7 meters has always been on the back of my mind, but at first it was, I need to get, start getting over 650, right? So and then now that I've done that, now it's, about being consistent. And then, hey, again, like I said, if I jump 7 meters next year, great. But I'm still wouldn't be a consistent 7 meter jumper. So the goal is by between 2023 and ideally before the Paralympics in 2024 is to be a consistent 7 meter jumper. It's possible, but obviously with the consistency and hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we talked about that 2024 goal, which is so important. What is your 2021 goal? Is it just making the Paralympics, or not just making the Paralympics, which is a huge deal, or is it top 8? Is it medals? What does that kind of more short-term goal look like?
Yeah, like I think for the short-term goal, like if we can get in good, consistent training, even in the next couple of weeks, or just kind of depends what these shutdown policies are like, but they get some good, consistent training in. I think the Paralympic standard is a 676. And again, the goal really was 680 last year. So with consistent training and some weights, I mean, ideally this year, the goal really was 680 jump. So, and if that qualifies me, great. And if I did qualify for the Paralympics in Tokyo, I would just take that as a time to learn. And, that it'd be really my first biggest meet I've ever really had, right? So it'd just be more of like that learning experience. Then potentially I could use that learning experience for future meets as I get older. But yeah, really my goal is to just kind of be fit for whenever my first big meet is. And again, 676 is definitely an achievable thing I can do relatively quickly with provided the consistent training. So that's kind of my goal. And then again, the 676, 680 will pretty much get me into like, last year would have ranked me around in top 6 or not top 7, right? So yeah, those are kind of my shorter term goals.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's good to just have check-ins at, some point along the process, and that's super important. But as I know, you are much more than just an athlete on the track. You work at Apple. I always tease you and tell you that I'll send you my address so you can send me some Apple products. How do you like working at Apple, and how does that help you like just get away from the track?
Yeah, definitely. It's helped me get away from the track, but it's actually over the past year built my mental strength for track. Working at Apple, there's a lot of mental pressure. You never know what customer is going to walk through the door, right? Just because someone wants to buy a Mac, they could be asking some questions and things that are like, what did they just ask me? So definitely that mental strength and pressure that I was put on at Apple, I was really able to take that into my competing for track. Like one thing I noticed this year, especially in January of 2020 when we started competing again, is I wasn't really getting that nervous before competition like I used to. And I think, well, one, that's just through experience of track, but two, that was also through the mental pressure and experience that I was kind of put on. And I know working at Apple and track are like two separate things, but when it comes to that mental strength, you can tie mental strength along with really whatever it is you're doing in life. Even me being the valedictorian for my grad class in grade 12, that hard work, being put under pressure, that mental kind of mindset that you have to have, all that kind of I've been able to carry into track. And again, I'm starting to notice that now as a young adult, but I didn't really notice that in the beginning. So, but yes, it's been great working at Apple. I actually have now had to resign just because we're getting back into training soon, but I can always go back there whenever I'd like.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, I think it's, I know it is tough training. I mean, especially when things get going and you're traveling so much, it's,
Yeah,
sometimes really hard to have a job, but it's cool. And it seems like you're passionate about that too. Is that right?
yeah, like passionate about like the Apple and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, totally. And the great customer interactions I've had, even being able to like relate with people who do sports who come into the Apple store, people who do have a disability who come into the Apple store. I'm still, again, despite my disability can't be seen, I'm still a guy that can still be able to relate with them and build those good customer interactions. And overall, the whole journey there was just really amazing. It was great. And again, all those things I learned with mental strength and hard work and toughness is just stuff I can just take on right into my track journey in the future. So no, it's been just amazing.
Good, good. Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when I worked in sales, I was always like, it would be a challenge. Like, all right, I'm gonna try not to stutter this time. I'm gonna try to, you know, get them to buy an extra pair of socks when I worked at this running shoe store. So it was just funny. Like my competitiveness would definitely come out, and I'd be like, all right, let's take that back down a notch sometimes. So yeah, but now I have some 5 kind of rapid fire, more fun questions. So the
Yeah.
first one is, if your life was a movie, what would be the title?
Oh. If my life was a movie, what would be the title? I think I'd choose something just as simple as exciting. Something
Love
just
it.
as simple as exciting.
Life is definitely not dull. It's definitely filled with excitement. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Obviously now we're all quote unquote tied up in our home or in the place that we live. And what is a dream destination that you want to go to, or just would be awesome to go to?
Like a place just to travel to,
Yeah,
or
places to travel, a place that you've always, maybe when you were younger, you just place you're like, oh, that would just be really cool to go there.
well, I definitely like because I know I was adopted from Haiti at 5 months, but I definitely want to go back to Haiti before I'm 30. Because being when you're adopted so young, you don't actually remember what it's like there. So I definitely want to go back there before I'm 30 for sure, just to do some missionary work, or I feel like I just have to help out in the community in some way over there because again, I know I was adopted from there, put in a great family, have access to food and water, but obviously most people in Haiti don't have access to that. So before I'm 30, that's definitely on the back of my mind. I want to go there for like 3 weeks, somehow do some missionary work there, whether it's building homes or helping give water out or just do something in some way to give back. Yeah, before I'm 30. So that's still on the back of my mind for sure as a goal.
Wow, no, that is really cool. Your favorite Apple product? I know this is a tough one.
Favorite Apple product? Oh boy. I think probably my Apple Watch. Because the main reason why I got an Apple Watch was to like track my steps, was because I was just getting into track and field and starting running. So I mean, I like it for other things too, but probably more for the physical activity and fitness. Definitely my Apple Watch.
Awesome, awesome. I don't know if you are a big music person, but I usually ask everyone what their favorite artist or a couple of their favorite artists are to listen to.
Um, Lately I've actually been listening to some of Calvin Harris's, music. I know he's like more the DJ, but he still does some pretty cool beats. So I mostly like music that I can kind of, tap my foot to, or that have a good beat that I can jump high or up and down to. So lately I've been listening to him.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And our last rapid fire question is, someone you admire outside of your family.
Someone I admire, and does it have to like a famous person or just
Not anyone. Yeah, anyone.
probably like the people I really like look up to as athletes, are obviously some of the greats. Like, I mean, you look at Usain Bolt, right? Despite he was, naturally talentedly fast, but still the hard work that he had to put in to kind of get to the success that he's had. So definitely him and some other big names on the circuit there. Mainly it's like mostly track people, but yeah, Usain Bolt, Andre DeGrasse, and a few of those other guys.
Usain Bolt's all right, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
okay.
All right.
Love it. So, my last real kind of serious question is, I think adaptability is something that I've kind of been a theme in this conversation and really this entire year. And I'm curious, what does adaptability mean to you, and how has that been something that has led to some success in your athletic career?
Yeah, I mean, my coach has briefly like talked on kind of on about like adaptability and stuff like that. I mean, he's always kind of, he's the coach to kind of get our bodies really well rounded for unusual kind of circumstances. So despite having talked about long jump most in my event, I still do other events like hurdles and some short sprint work and some other kinds of things in training, just to get my body kind of trained for the unusual circumstances. I mean, obviously with competing, because I haven't competed a lot, especially really internationally ever. I haven't really had to deal with some big unusual circumstances. But I mean, if we're talking about things outside of track like the pandemic, no, that's definitely been, I think for every athlete, it's just been hard to kind of rearrange the schedule, even stay motivated, keep even to train even or to go out on runs and stuff like that. But for me, I just kind of think to myself, if there's athletes who are like, 10 years older than me, And if they can still push themselves to do it, like let's say they're 10 years older than me and they had Tokyo and that was their goal, they were going to retire after that. But now, because of this pandemic, they have to maybe rearrange their goals. I'm thinking, if they can do it and they're 10 years older than me and I'm only 20, there's no reason why I can't change my mindset and just work hard and keep going. And it's tough, and we're talking about a lot of things that might be canceled or whatever. But at the end of the day, the hope and the faith is never canceled. I really believe that at the end of the day, no storm lasts forever. Even if you're in the storm and you can't really see the end of it, there is still. I think we'll look back in 3 or 4 years from now, and we'll be able to see what good came out of this. We can't necessarily see that good just yet, but I believe there still will be some good out of it. And again, no storm lasts forever. So those, at the end of the day, no matter how hard my mindset is, or if I'm going through a really hard time, I just think about those things, and that's just what keeps me going.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's crazy. You can call it adversity, but a lot of times, like when you're going through it, it's just so hard, and you think it's the worst thing ever. And like, obviously, I always relate to my brain injury because that was like the big moment, and I look on back on that, and I'm like, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like, I have so many cool opportunities. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, getting paralyzed wasn't fun, but
Yeah,
I learned so much. Do you view your adversity kind of in that same light?
I do now, but I never did in especially growing up in school, because again, in junior high, that was probably the hardest years for me. I was not doing track in junior high. And some days I would just think, I can't really see any good that comes out of this learning disability because, in my junior high class, sometimes we were just made fun of, oh, you guys aren't going to university, you'll never be successful, blah, 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 things like that. So that was definitely pretty challenging. But now when I look back on it, I mean, if it wasn't for my learning disability, there would be no Paralympic stuff and talk like that. If it wasn't for my learning disability, me being a valedictorian wouldn't have been as special because, it's been 20 years since someone in a PACE learning program has been able to do it. So when I kind of look back on all these things, it's in some ways special that I have this disability because I can use it to either motivate others or help others or relate with others or even customers in the Apple store. So definitely didn't think this, obviously, when I was a kid growing up in junior high. Junior high was probably one of my most depressing years, but, kind of getting into high school in grade 10, 11, 12, as I was getting, involved with leadership, social justice clubs, as I started working in some of my first jobs, like theme park called Callaway Park and things like that. It just was all starting to come together.
Yeah, no, I always say like it's interesting how your tough moments today will turn into blessings down the road. And that's kind of quote that I always kind of live by. And you did mention motivation a couple minutes ago. And what when you aren't motivated, and we all definitely get those. Is there something that you anchor yourself, or is there something that you go watch, or is there someone you go talk to when that motivation maybe lacks a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, definitely listening to music, again, upbeat, positive music helps me stay motivated. Even having Zoom calls, with my coach, and when we, talk about some good goals in the future and what I'm capable of doing, that also helps me stay motivated. Even talking to my parents sometimes about some things help me stay motivated, or my sister even. So it's not like just one thing, but there's definitely these little things in my life, or these people that I have like a little community that helps me stay motivated. I mean, at the end of the day, people will see me compete, but what I'll tell them is that, I couldn't have done it without, me and my dad, we love talking about track and, talking about some cool things. And when me and my coach talk, so it's not just me, it's more of, there's a bigger picture behind me that's keeping me stay motivated at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I always go into meetings with my coach, either like if I'm mad or something about something, and I always go in there pumped up to do the exact opposite thing that she wants me to do, and I'm like, dang it, how do you do that? Come on. Like it's super fun. And so I have two questions that I ask all the guests on my podcast. And so, firstly, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, like mainly on Instagram, Noah Najan, so Noah, and then Najan, Najan. That's kind of like my biggest kind of social media thing. But I am on Facebook as well as Noah Najan as well.
Awesome, awesome. And the last final question is, what do you want your impact to be on the world?
Ooh, on the world. Well, I've kind of answered this in two ways. So number one is I still want to give back, you know, not just going to Haiti and giving back, but I want to be able to still give back in some sort of way. And number two, I still really, at the end of this, whether it's in track or whatever I'm doing, still want to be a role model or example to people who have learning disabilities, to still follow their dreams no matter what. I mean, when you're growing up in a paced learning program, especially in elementary and junior high, sometimes we'd have guest speakers come in and say, you know, well, guys, you're not ever going to university, so, you know, you might only be janitor the rest of your life. I mean, they weren't physically saying that, but that's kind of what the message was coming across. So, you know, I want to be able to give people hope who have disabilities, or if you put your mind to whatever it is you're good at, you find that passion, you find that goal, and you find something that you love to do, stick with it, and with the hard work, the success can come. So definitely a role model for people who have learning disabilities, not just within my program, but with anything, right? So yeah, those are probably the two biggest things: giving back and then being a role model for people who have learning disabilities.
Awesome. Yeah, you said that so beautifully, and I think that is a perfect place to end. Noah, thank you so much for coming on the Strides with Graywolf podcast. I had a blast
Thank
chatting
you.
with
Yeah.
you, and it's good to finally be able to see you. It's
Yes.
been a
Yeah.
little bit, so